prayers, then do a little bit of meditation on the topic we're currently looking at.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate, protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
So take a few moments to make sure you're really here and you're sitting in a comfortable position. Try not to be tense in any part of the body. And that your mind is here, not thinking of other places or times or things. So put all such thoughts aside and decide to really keep your mind in the present to get the most out of what we're doing here for the next hour and a half. And also to make this time of the greatest benefit to ourselves and others, short-term and long-term, refresh the Bodhicitta motivation that you generated earlier, or if you didn't do that, then you can do that now. Just bring into your mind the wish to benefit others, all beings if possible, and to travel the path to enlightenment, Buddhahood, to be able to help others in the best possible way. I think that's your reason for being here. So, so now for the meditation. We're in a section of the text where Lama Tsongkhapa is talking about how it is necessary to have both method and wisdom in order to reach Buddhahood. And both of these practices, that are like the two wings of a bird, require conceptualization. And so he's refuting the idea that some people hold, including some Buddhists, that conceptualization should be given up. So there are Buddhist people who say that any kind of conception or conceptualization involves grasping at inherent existence, grasping at things in a mistaken way, and so it keeps us in samsara, keeps us trapped in samsara, and so we should just completely give up all conceptualizations. So try to remember if you've ever encountered that idea, reading books or hearing teachers or hearing students talk about that. So stopping all thoughts might sound inviting, even convincing. And in fact, meditating in that way can lead to a feeling of calm and peace. However, Lama Tsongkhapa says that this kind of idea is incorrect, to think that just by stopping all of our thoughts, we will be able to attain enlightenment. And he uses many quotations from sutras about the need to have both method and wisdom to attain enlightenment, and how the method side of the path involves thought, like to cultivate compassion, to practice generosity, and so on. So try to imagine what it would be like if you did try to stop all your thoughts. How would that affect your practice of ethics and cultivation of compassion and love and patience? Would they work without thinking about anything? And then also for the wisdom side of the path, which means generating the understanding of the true nature of things, how they are empty of inherent existence, independent existence. Would you be able to understand that and gain the realization of emptiness if you just stopped all your thoughts? So Lama Tsongkhapa's point is that our goal is enlightenment, Buddhahood, and that's a state that has many, many, many excellent qualities and abilities and skills with which to benefit all sentient beings, lead them out of samsara, lead them to enlightenment as well. And such a state can't be attained just by not thinking about anything, just by meditating with a blank mind. But we actually need to do many different types of practices, and many of those do require thought, but virtuous, positive, constructive thoughts, not just any kind of thought. So see if that makes sense to you. There was a quote that I encountered some years ago. It was by one of the Indian yogis, either Saraha or Talopa. And it was something about how, like in India, if you ever lived in India, the Indian women, like in the villages, they don't have Brillo pads, to scrub their pots. They use ashes from the fire. So, so they take a handful of grass or straw and then they dip it in the ashes and rub it, wet it and then rub it against the pots. And it really works to clean off the black stuff on the bottom of your pots. And so Saraha, or whoever it was, this yogi said something like we do something similar in meditation. We use thought, which it can be dirty, it can be kind of something to be discarded, but we use thought in order to clean our thoughts and to make our mind, free of negative thoughts, afflictive thoughts, and have only pure and positive, virtuous thoughts. So I found that really, really helpful, having done that myself when I lived in India, finding that it does work. Okay, so so this point may not be an issue for most of us if we've been exposed to Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings right from the beginning of our career in Dharma. But we might encounter people who have learned this idea. They may come to the Abbey, or we may meet them somewhere and have, they have this idea that, just stop all your thoughts and you'll get enlightened. So it's good to be aware of how Lama Tsongkhapa refuted that idea so that we can discuss that with anybody who's open to discussing it. So we left off on page 236, right at the bottom, and we're kind of just in the middle of one section where he presented a kind of interesting argument in response to the idea that conceptions thinking this is that is necessarily self-grasping. So this is what some people say. Any kind of conception involves self-grasping at phenomena, grasping phenomena as inherently existing. So in response to that idea, he says, then when we meditate on Lamrim subjects like precious human rebirth, impermanence and death, the nature of samsara, generating renunciation, and so on, all the topics of the Lamrim, they involve conceptual thinking. So when doing those meditations, if any kind of thought, any kind of conception is self-grasping of phenomena, then our self-grasping at phenomena will increase with respect to those topics. So our self-grasping would get stronger and more conviction. And then he said, then when we meditate on wisdom, which is opposite to self-grasping of phenomena, then our certainty about those topics would decrease. Yeah, we generate certainty about, say, precious human rebirth, but we're doing it in the context of thinking everything is inherently existing, grasping at inherent existence. And so as our conviction about precious human rebirth grows, also our conviction about things being truly existing, inherently existing, would grow as well. Then when we meditate on wisdom, which is opposite to grasping at things as inherently existing, then our conviction in those topics would decrease. Our conviction about the precious human rebirth would decrease. That's what he says. I mean, I don't know if we have to try it to see if that happens, but that's his view. And so he's saying then the two sides, the method side and the wisdom side, would contradict each other like hot and cold. And it wouldn't be possible to develop a strong and enduring mind of certainty about both sides. They would sort of, harm each other, contradict each other. So that's his view. It's a little complicated, but anyway, we're kind of in the middle of that. And so then, bottom of page 236, he goes on to say, well, this is not quite, I guess this is a different argument. He says, at the time of the result, that means Buddhahood, both the truth body and form body are construed as the object to be obtained, and these are not contradictory. So the two main aspects of a Buddha, the two bodies of a Buddha, are the Dharmakaya, the truth body, and then the Rupakaya, the form body. And these are not contradictory. In fact, they are said to be one nature, and they both arise simultaneously. As soon as enlightenment is attained, there's the Dharmakaya and also the Rupakaya, the form bodies of a Buddha. So yeah, normally they're considered like that, not contradictory. Accordingly, at the time of the path, these following two must also not be contradictory. First, a mind of certainty induced with respect to the total freedom from even the merest particle of elaborations of a referent object that is apprehended as having signs of the two selves. That's kind of a lot of words there, but it mainly is referring to emptiness. Yeah, that nothing exists truly, inherently as it appears. Okay, so that's a mind of certainty about emptiness of inherent existence of all phenomena. And then two, a mind of certainty induced with respect to from this, that arises, and this has that fault and that, or that quality. And so that second point is referring to the conventional nature of things like dependent arising. We've just had lots of teachings on from Geshe Shitake. So just certainty about cause and effect, from this cause arises that effect, from ignorance arises afflictions and karma and all the suffering and so on and so forth. From non-virtuous action arises suffering, from virtuous action arises happiness. So we need to have conviction, certainty about that. He's saying those two minds need to be not contradictory as we are following the path. And yeah, that will lead to the two bodies of a Buddha. The wisdom, understanding emptiness, is the main cause for the Dharmakaya, the truth body of a Buddha. And then the main cause of the Rupakaya, the form body of a Buddha, is they say method, but that does involve understanding things on the conventional level, like cause and effect, dependent arising. So then he says, that depends, in fact, on how the view of the two truths is established in the context of the ground, or the basis. So we need to have a good understanding of the two truths, conventional truths, ultimate truths, and how they are not contradictory. The two truths are not contradictory. They don't contradict each other. They're mutually supportive, interdependent. The valid cognition, thoroughly positing the ultimate, determines the mode of subsistence, or the manner of being, of all the phenomena of cyclic existence and nirvana, as being without the merest particle of inherent existence. So that's talking about the valid cognition that understands the ultimate truth, that all phenomena in samsara nirvana is totally empty of inherent existence. The valid cognition of conventions, thoroughly positing causes and effects, individually determines phenomena that are causes and effects without the slightest confusion. So that's the conventional valid cognizer that understands how cause and effect exist, and there's no confusion there. Once you gain certainty by way of scriptures and reasonings that these two valid convictions do not harm each other in the least, but rather assist each other, then you will realize the meaning of the two truths, and you will come to count yourself among those who have found the intention of the victor. So that's similar to the verses in the three principal aspects of the path that talk about the need to understand the harmony of the two truths and that they don't contradict each other. And that is the intention of the Buddha. So, yeah. So at the time of the path, as we are following the path to Buddhahood, we need to have a good understanding of the two truths, ultimate truths, conventional truths, and how they are not contradictory. Because the wisdom side of the path is involved with the ultimate truth, and the method side of the path is involved with conventional truths. And those are the two main causes for enlightenment. So we need to create both of those two aspects of the path to attain enlightenment with the two bodies. And so we shouldn't see them as contradicting each other. Otherwise, it won't work. We won't be able to practice both of those sides of the path and create the causes for enlightenment, for Buddhahood. So this is a little bit complicated, this section here, but hopefully it'll get more clear when we get to the insight section at the end of the book, his assertions about emptiness. Okay, so then he goes on to say the meaning of the third scriptural passage. So this whole discussion arose because of these three quotations from Sutra on the bottom of page 235. So he's already kind of talked about the first two, and the third one is at the bottom of 235. It's from the Questions of Brahma Sutra, and that says, conduct in all its varieties is conceptual. Through non-conceptuality is enlightenment. Okay, so now he's explaining the meaning of that one. He says, the meaning of the third scriptural passage is explained in the third stages of meditation, Kamalashila's text. The context for this line of the sutra is an analysis of production and so forth, in order to teach that generosity and so forth are not really produced. So what that means is the context at that point in the text, they're talking about production, and it's an analysis of production. How are things produced? How do things arise? How do things come into existence? And this is looking at it, in an ultimate sense, like, do things arise inherently, truly, from their own side, independently? So you've probably heard that explained by Venerable Children. It's mainly from Nagarjuna, the four types of production: production from self, from others, from both, from nothing. Analyzing those four possibilities of production and finding none of them is correct. Nothing exists, nothing arises, nothing is produced inherently, independently. So that's the context in which that line, this line of the sutra, comes. So the term conceptuality is used to teach that they are merely imputed by conceptuality. However, they are not taught to be objects to be discarded and not relied upon. So going back to that quote on the bottom of page 35, when it says conduct, and here conduct means, it's another term for method, the method side of the path, like practicing generosity, ethics, patience, and so on. So that kind of practice in all its varieties is conceptual. So what that really means is it's merely imputed by conception. It's not inherently existing, but merely imputed by conception. So that's the actual meaning of that line. So it's not saying that they should be discarded because they're conceptual. Does that make sense? A little bit. And then, yeah. And then the compendium is back on page 237. The compendium of the sutras, that's a text by Nagarjuna, also clearly sets forth that a one-sided path is not enough. Bodhisattvas who lack skillful means should not make strong effort in the profound Dharma. And Geshe Zopa's explanation of that is that bodhisattvas who are not skilled in the method side of the path don't understand emptiness properly. They will not be able to really understand the profound Dharma, emptiness of inherent existence. So we need the method side even to be able to correctly understand the wisdom side of the path. Then there's a quote from the sutra teaching the Tathagata's inconceivable secret. This says, "Child of the lineage, it is like this. A fire burns because it has a cause, like the fuel, wood or gas or whatever. If the cause is absent, it subsides. Likewise, a mind blazes due to an observed object. If the observed object is absent, the mind subsides, meaning the mind doesn't function. Mind always has to have an object that it observes, that it's dealing with. If there's no observed object, then the mind doesn't function. Therefore, the bodhisattva skilled in means knows how to completely extinguish observed objects by means of the thoroughly pure perfection of wisdom, but he does not completely extinguish observed objects with respect to the roots of virtue." So bodhisattva learns how to bring the mind to a state of directly realizing emptiness, in which there is an object to that mind, but it's emptiness of inherent existence. And everything else, all other objects disappear for that mind. I think that's what it's saying there. Bodhisattva knows how to, extinguish observed object, especially, the appearance of true existence, inherent existence, by developing the perfection of wisdom. But when it comes to the method side of the path, practicing generosity, ethics, patience, and so on, to create virtue, to create merit, then the bodhisattva doesn't completely extinguish observed objects. Needs observed objects to be able to cultivate those. He does not allow the observed objects for mental afflictions to arise. So, doesn't allow the mind to get caught up in objects of anger and attachment and so on, but places the mind on the observed objects of the perfections. So generosity and ethics and so on. The bodhisattva is able to keep the mind in those states and utilize observed objects to cultivate those. Oops, I just lost my place. He also individually analyzes the observed object that is emptiness, but looks upon the observed object that is all sentient beings with great compassion. So Geshe Zopa's commentary to that is that although bodhisattvas understand each object as empty of inherent existence, so they know everything to be empty of an inherent existence, they still see sentient beings as objects of great compassion. So they're able to balance those two, seeing everything as an empty of inherent existence, but without losing their compassion, their love, their bodhicitta towards sentient beings. Those two are not contradictory. It's a tricky balance to get, but they learn how to do it. So then Lama Tsongkhapa says, you must differentiate between statements that there is an observed object and statements that there is no observed objects. I think, I couldn't find an explanation of that, but I think he's saying that in the sutra, there are statements talking about there being an observed object and others saying there's no observed object. So you have to understand what they're talking about. And I think when it's talking about an observed object, that's talking about the method side of the path, dealing with conventional truths. And when it's mentioned there's no observed object, that would be the wisdom side of the path, ultimate truth. The bonds of the mental afflictions and apprehending signs need to be loosened. So the mental afflictions those are the afflictive obstacles, obscurations that need to be abandoned to attain liberation. And then talking about apprehending signs is the other kinds of obscurations called cognitive obscurations, obscurations to omniscience. So the bonds of the two obscurations need to be loosened, whereas the ropes of the trainings need to be tightened. So trainings would be like our vows, precepts, ethical conduct, and the bodhisattva practices and so on. So those need to be tightened. We don't want to loosen those, but we do want to loosen the bonds of the afflictions, the obscurations. So we need to differentiate between those two different kinds of bonds. Then he says the two misdeeds, that's referring to the natural misdeeds and the proscribed. Is it proscribed? Like in our vows, some of our vows are related to actions that are naturally non-virtuous, like killing for anybody. Yeah, killing is non-virtuous. But then some of our vows are about things that aren't naturally non-virtuous, but are so because they were mentioned by the Buddha. For monastics, you shouldn't do this, right? So they're not naturally non-virtuous, but as monastics, we avoid them. So those two must be destroyed, overcome, stopped, whereas virtuous actions need not be destroyed. So we don't want to stop all actions because we need to create virtuous ones. We just stop the negative ones. Therefore, being restrained by the trainings and being bound by the apprehension of signs are not the same, right? So we have to make a distinction between these two kinds of restraint. Restraint by the trainings, our vows, that's something positive, constructive, virtuous. But being restrained by or bound by apprehending signs, which is another way of saying apprehending inherent existence, true existence. Those two are not the same. We want to stop that one, but we don't want to stop this one. Nor is loosening one's guarding and restraint the same as loosening the bonds of apprehending a self. So when talking about loosening bonds, we don't want to loosen the bonds of our practice, especially ethics, keeping precepts and so on, but we do want to loosen the bonds of apprehending a self. So I think it sounds like there were practitioners, probably at the time of Lama Tsongkhapa, who conflated loosening the bonds of the afflictions and obscurations and loosening the trainings, like keeping precepts. So maybe they thought that in order to release grasping at inherent existence, you should also release keeping your precepts tightly, yeah? So maybe they thought, oh, if you're too tight with your precepts, then you're grasping at inherent existence. So loosen up, lighten up, and not keep your vows so carefully. And actually, this reminds me, I don't know if this is an example of that, but there's a book in our library that I read last year. I think it's called something about crossing many mountains or over many mountains. I think it was your book because it has your name in it. It's written by a Swiss Tibetan woman, and she's telling the story of her mother and her grandmother. Remember that book? It's quite lovely. And most of the book, a big chunk of the book right at the beginning, is about the grandmother who lived in Tibet. And the author, the granddaughter, says that her grandmother has been a nun all her life since the age of 13. And then I was wondering, well, how did she happen to be a mother? So that gets explained later. And so what happened was, she was actually very, very devoted, very, very devoted practitioner, and she was living in a little community of nuns together with their teacher, and they each had their own little hut. And some other people came along, including a monk, and it seems that the monk was attracted to her, and at a certain point just moved in, moved into her little hut. And then they started having kids. And so she belonged to the Nyingma tradition, and it seems that in the Nyingma tradition, I don't know if that's still the case today, but they don't regard celibacy as so essential to keep, And so it sounded like, this nun, the grandmother, wasn't completely comfortable with the situation. She felt a bit ashamed that she wasn't keeping her vow of celibacy, but it seemed like it was just normal. And maybe I was thinking also because she was a woman, and a young woman at that time, and women didn't have much rights. So, a monk, monks are more important. So a monk moves in, you just have to accept it, And so I thought, well, that's interesting. So just, reading this made me wonder if that may have been the view that, okay, you've got these vows, but you don't have to keep them so seriously. It's just, grasping an inherent existence. I don't know. That wasn't explained in the book. And in fact, it sounds like the grandmother didn't really study that much. She was really, a very dedicated practitioner. She did a lot of practice all her life. But maybe in terms of studying the Dharma and studying precepts and so on, maybe that wasn't available. Has anyone else heard any stories like that of? So it just makes me think that maybe that kind of view was around at Lama Tsongkhapa's time, and he wasn't too happy about it, and really emphasized the importance of keeping and studying precepts, studying the Vinaya and keeping the precepts, and that it's not at all contradictory to the path. In fact, it's totally complementary. We do need to have a good understanding of our precepts. That's part of the perfection of ethics, and that's part of the path to enlightenment. We need that in order to attain enlightenment. So I think in this section, Lama Tsongkhapa is just, clarifying what we do need to release or overcome or destroy. Afflictions, misdeeds, obscurations, those are the things we want to overcome. But what needs to be guarded, retained, kept carefully are things like vows, precepts, virtue, and so on. So there's, loosening our ethical conduct isn't the same as loosening self-grasping. And then the last sentence in that paragraph says, therefore the meaning of destruction and self-liberation and so forth need to be examined well. So I found that sentence a little unclear and didn't find much explanation, although Geshe Jamba Gyatso, Geshe Jamba Gyatso's commentaries said, we need to understand the meaning of the terms destruction, which is shikpo, and self-liberation, wrongdro. That these terms were used by past scholars. And he says destruction here refers to the destruction of mental afflictions, non-virtuous actions, and so forth. So there are things we do want to destroy, the negative aspects of our behavior and our mind and so on. And he didn't explain the term self-liberation, but when I looked it up in the Tibetan dictionary, it has various meanings, including natural liberation. So I wonder if it might be a term in Dzogchen texts. I don't know if anyone's encountered that. Anyway, so these are two terms that appear in texts, and Lama Tsongkhapa is saying we need to have a good understanding what they're referring to. Okay, last paragraph. When Master Kamala Shila negates mental inattention, he does not negate the meditation where the mind is placed within the view that has determined the meaning of the ultimate mode of being and settled single-pointedly on that without attending to anything else. So I'll read this paragraph and then I'll read Geshe Gyamgyatso's commentary to it. It's not completely clear. However, he does negate that meditation on emptiness consists of a mere stabilization in which the mind is left without conceiving anything, without placing it on the meaning determined by the view, the ultimate mode of being. This is the same for the Mantrayana, Vajrayana, Tantra, and Paramitayana, the Sutra path. What similarities and differences exist between the two systems with regard to analyzing with the wisdom of fine investigation and maintaining one's meditation will be explained below. Okay, so Geshe Gyamgyatso's commentary to this paragraph says, Kamala Shila refuted the assertion that to not think about anything is meditation on emptiness. So Kamala Shila said, yeah, just stopping all your thoughts, that's not meditation on emptiness. While he did not refute meditating single-pointedly on emptiness, he did refute meditating single-pointedly on the emptiness that is a mere lack of conceptuality. So, in other words, just stopping all thoughts and saying that is meditation on emptiness. He refuted that. When meditating on emptiness, the mind must be focused single-pointedly on the final reality of all phenomena, which is called suchness or thusness or emptiness. Such meditation on emptiness is not refuted by Kamala Shila. Rather, he refutes the assertion that meditation on ultimate truth is meditation on a complete lack of observed objects, just stopping anything, any kind of thought. This is because we need to meditate on the observed object that is the emptiness of all phenomena of true existence, inherent existence, or existence from their own side. We must focus the mind single-pointedly on this observed object. Therefore, this way of meditating on emptiness is not refuted. On the other hand, meditation without thinking about anything and completely lacking an observed object, which is just a cause of cyclic existence, is refuted. Yeah, so that's just a clarification of what Kamala Shila's point is. And this is true both in the Sutrayana teachings path and in the Mantrayana or Tantrayana, Vajrayana. And then Geshe Gyamgyatso adds a bit to that. He says, there are some differences between Sutra and Tantra in terms of analytical meditation, which are yet to be explained. For example, from the point of view of Sutra, the mind that does analytical meditation on emptiness is a coarse mind, whereas in Tantra, it is the subtle mind. In the Sutra system, there is not even a presentation of a very subtle mind. However, that's one difference between the two systems. In the Sutra, there's no talk about a subtle mind, which is found in Tantra. So in Tantra, especially highest yoga Tantra, you're trying to use the very subtle mind of clear light to meditate on emptiness. But he says there's actually no difference in terms of the emptiness. So the emptiness that is meditated on is the same both in Sutra and Tantra. The object of negation, inherent existence, is also the same. But this will be explained later. Okay, so we finished that section. Any questions? Anyway, the point is, we need both method and wisdom, and we shouldn't throw out all thoughts, all conceptions. Those are important, those are necessary for both method and wisdom. If we throw out all thoughts, we won't accomplish either of those two aspects of the path. We'll lose our wings to reach enlightenment. So that's the point here. Selden, where's the microphone?
I was reading Jeffrey Hopkins' Emptiness Yoga book, and I was focusing on the section that talked about how we need to get a firm grasp of how we view the conventional, world we live in, that its inherentness, really to feel how strong that is before we can hope to, dissect it, like to see how it causes a suffering, and like we need to see that there's a problem before we can get at it. So that's where I think the conception comes in.
Yeah. We have this instinctive, innate view of everything as inherently existing, independently existing, and that's just there instinctively. It's even beyond thought, it's just there all the time. And just by stopping our thoughts, that's not going to go away. It's just, we don't get rid of the appearance of inherent existence or the grasping at inherent existence just by stopping your thoughts. So we have to use thought, like that quote about the ashes. We have to use thought to clean our thought, to clean our mind. That's a big point, and that's, just using it constructively in a helpful way, and not just wild, out of control thoughts. Okay, anyone else? No? Okay, so now we'll start a new chapter, chapter 18, which is called Training in the Perfections and Gathering Disciples. So now we're jumping into the big topic of the 6 perfections, but there's some material in the beginning before we actually get to those. So the slides, so there's a lot of outline points, so I put them on this screen just to kind of organize them. Okay, so explaining the actual stages of training in the precepts. So this outline point was on page 229. That was where it first appeared. Up at the top, so the main heading was how to train in the conduct after generating the mind. So after generating bodhicitta, then how we train in the conduct. So we looked first at the precepts of aspiring bodhicitta, and then this section we just went through, how Buddhahood can't be achieved only by method or wisdom alone. And now the third point is explaining the actual stages of training in the precepts. And precepts here is often translated as training. It's lapa in Tibetan. It's not really the word for vow. So this has 2 main points: how to train in the Mahayana in general, and how to train in the Vajrayana in particular. And that doesn't come until page 425, so we got another 200 pages to go before we get to that one. Okay, so then how to train in the Mahayana in general has 3 points. Developing the wish to train in the precepts of bodhisattvas. 2, taking the vows of the victor's children after developing the wish. And 3, training in the vows after taking them. So first is developing the wish to train in the precepts of bodhisattvas. It is inappropriate to study the precepts of the Vinaya and Tantra without taking the respective vows, but these present precepts are different. So it said there's 3 main types of precepts or vows. There's the Vinaya vow, the Pratimoksha vows, which includes the ones that we're keeping, the lay precepts, 5 lay precepts, and so on. So there's 8 different types of Pratimoksha vows. And then there's the Bodhisattva vows, and then there's Tantric vows. And so the Pratimoksha vows and the Tantric vows, you're not supposed to know what they are before you take them. That's the traditional view. But I think contemporary teachers are, saying, especially for us, because we don't grow up in a Buddhist culture and vows are not something we're used to. So it's important to know what they are before we take them. That's the approach of some teachers. Some teachers, I think, are still very traditional. They won't let you learn the vows until after you take them. And the same is true for the Tantric vows. You're not supposed to know what they are until you take them at a highest yoga tantra initiation. But with the Bodhisattva vows, it's different. We are supposed to know them before we take them. So he says, first, you come to understand the precepts so that your mind is purified, mind stream is purified. Then, if you feel enthusiasm for holding them, the vows are imparted on you. They will be very stable if you bring them to mind as an object. After having understood the precepts, develop a heart. What is it? Bring them to mind. Okay, they will be very stable if you bring them to mind as an object after having understood the precepts, develop a heartfelt desire to train in them, and then take the vows. That is why this is a good method. So yeah, he's encouraging people before taking the Bodhisattva vows to study them and have a good understanding of them, develop a strong wish to train in them, then take the vows. So it sounds like Venerable Children was requested to give the Bodhisattva vow, and she is planning to do that after the Memorial Day retreat. So anyone who hasn't taken them, there's that opportunity. You can also retake vows. And I'll mention that later. So the second point, taking the vows of the victor's children after developing the wish. In my commentary on the ethics chapter of a Sangha's bodhisattva levels, I already extensively determined how to first take the vows. I can't turn the page. How to then guard against the root downfalls and infractions that are misdeeds, and how to restore the vows if they have degenerated. And the footnote says, so Tsongkhapa's commentary is called The Highway to Enlightenment, Jangchu Shunglam. And so he's saying, Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, he already wrote a text about this, about the vows and so on, as a commentary to this text by a Sangha called the Bodhisattva Levels. So I did a little bit of research and found there is a translation of this text by Lama Tsongkhapa, and we managed to find a PDF of it. So yeah, it was translated by Mark Tatz in Asanga's chapter. This is the title of the book or paper, whatever. Asanga's chapter on ethics with a commentary of Tsongkhapa, the basic path to awakening, the complete bodhisattva. And it looks like it's out of print. I found one copy that was $239, but we found a PDF. So it is available online if anyone would like to get that. But also there's this book, we have a number of copies in our library on the Bodhisattva vows by Dr. Rinpoche, one of my teachers, who's over 90 years old. He's amazing. And still teaching. So he gave commentary in a number of places, mainly in Europe, but also Malaysia. So it was compiled and put together by his translator in this book. And so we have some copies of that. If anyone wants to study the Bodhisattva vows, this would be a good one. There's also a commentary by Geshe Sonam Rinchen from Snowland. So we have copies of that. So there are resources for studying the Bodhisattva vows. And this is largely based on Tsongkhapa's commentary. So even if it's not an actual translation, it's based on that. Okay, then, therefore, since the vows certainly need to be looked into before they are taken, consult that source to understand these points. Okay, then number 3, training in the vows after taking them. This has 3 points. The foundation of the precepts. I think that's the next slide. Yeah, so those are the 3 points, subpoints. The foundation of the precepts, how the precepts are contained in it, I guess referring to the foundation, and then the stages of training. So first, the foundation of the precepts. Although there are infinite clear divisions, when grouped together by type, all the precepts, meaning trainings, practices of bodhisattvas, are contained in the 6 perfections. Therefore, the 6 perfections constitute the great synopsis that condenses all the essential points of the bodhisattva path. So bodhisattva needs to do lots of things to reach enlightenment, but they can be, all those things can be summarized in the 6 perfections. So the second point is how the precepts are contained in it. So that has 2 points. I hope it's helpful to put these up. I know it's going through outlines, and especially in the book, it doesn't actually number them. So, yeah. Okay, so how the precepts are contained in it, meaning how the precepts or trainings are contained in the foundation, i.e. the 6 perfections, so how all the trainings are contained in the 6 perfections. So this has 2 points. First is the main topic, which is the specific number of perfections, and then 2, a secondary discussion of their specific order. Okay, so the main topic has 6 divisions. Next slide. Okay, so the main topic, the specific number of perfections. The Blessed One, the Buddha, made just a synopsis of the 6 perfections, whereas Maitreya, the holy regent of the victors, established certainty in them by elucidating, as they had been intended, the essential points among the reasons for their formulation. So this book doesn't mention which text it is, but in the Lamrim Chenmo, it's the ornament for Mahayana sutras, the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, because Maitreya wrote 5 main texts. So out of those, it's this one, the ornament for Mahayana sutras, that contains this information about, essential points about the 6 perfections. They account for how their number was specified. How did they come up with 6? Why not 24 or 3? Why 6? Therefore, when you find certainty about this in a way that captivates the mind, you will hold the practice of the 6 perfections as supreme instructions. The number of the perfections is specified as 6 from the points of view of, there's six ways. First is high status. Second, the accomplishment of the 2 welfares. Third, the complete accomplishment of the welfare of others in all aspects. 4, their comprising the entire Mahayana. 5, they're influencing all aspects of the path or method. And 6, the 3 trainings. Okay, so we'll be going through these. First, the number as specified from the point of view of high status. It's high status, the term high status usually refers to good rebirths in future lives. So I think that's what's talking about here. To bring the vast conduct of a bodhisattva to completion, you need many consecutive lives. And to progress along the path in them, you need a life totally complete in all excellent characteristics. So if we're aiming for enlightenment, we're looking at many lifetimes. It takes a long time to reach enlightenment. So we're going to have many lifetimes before we get there. We have to make sure that in those lifetimes, we will have all the right conditions that we need to continue following this path, cultivating bodhicitta and practicing the 6 perfections. Without it, even if you practice with something that merely has some excellent aspects, like our current life, there will be no progress whatsoever. Thus, a life that is excellent in all its aspects is necessary. To elaborate, you need a life that is endowed with the 4 excellences. Punsok, that's the word for excellence. Punsok. We need 4 punsoks. So first, wealth at your disposal. Second, a body with which to practice. Third, companions with whom to practice. And 4, the ability to complete the actions that you undertake. And those 4 things, respectively, are the result of the first 4 perfections. So the perfection of giving is the cause to have a life, to have wealth, resources. And the perfection of ethics leads to having a good body that we can use to practice, a human body. And then perfection of patience leads to having companions, good friends with whom to practice. If we don't know how to be patient, we're not going to have any friends. And then joyous effort, perfection of joyous effort leads to being able to complete what we undertake, being able to bring things to completion. The next sentence, I'm not happy about the way it's translated here. It says, however, many things become conditions for the mental afflictions simply because they are excellent. So the other translation, the Lamrim Chenmo, it has the same sentence, and it's translated there as these 4 excellences can become conditions for afflictions. That makes more sense. Yeah. So if you just have these 4 things, wealth, good body, companions, those kind of conditions can give rise to afflictions, right? You can have attachment, you can have aversion if somebody harms our friends, and so on. So just having those four things, those four excellences, could lead to afflictions. And then he says, thus it is also necessary not to come under the power of the affliction. So we have to, if we do have these four things, we have to watch out for afflictions and not let our mind get afflicted in relation to these. And he says, but that is not enough either. Oh, so in Geshe-Zopa's commentary, being able to keep our mind from coming under the control of the afflictions, we need the fifth perfection, meditative stabilization. That's probably like implied here if you read between the lines. So we need to be able to keep our mind under control with concentration. It's sometimes called concentration, the fifth perfection, but it's samten, and it's more correct to translate it as meditative stabilization, the fifth perfection. So we need that. We need to train in that to be able to prevent our mind being overcome by afflictions. And he goes on to say, but that is not enough either. You must differentiate well the objects that are to be unmistakably engaged in and turned away from with respect to what should be adopted and what should be discarded. So in other words, we need the sixth perfection, discriminating wisdom, because there's different kinds of wisdom. Normally we talk about the wisdom of emptiness, but there's also conventional wisdom, and that includes knowing what's virtuous and what's non-virtuous, what to do and what to avoid if we want happiness and don't want suffering. So we need that sixth perfection so that we can understand how to behave properly. Otherwise, the excellences will destroy you, just like bamboo and plantain trees are destroyed by bearing fruit, and like a young molly mule is destroyed by pregnancy. Anyone ever heard that term before? Molly mule? Anyway, I guess it's a term for a young female mule who maybe dies when they get pregnant. Maybe they're too young or whatever. Anyway, so the point is we have to be careful having these excellences and not let our mind get afflicted, and make sure we have a good understanding of what to do and what to avoid. So we need all the six perfections. The wise will understand that the excellences are the effects of previous good actions and will strive for their causes again so that they will increase. The unwise will use the effects previously accumulated and thereby exhaust them. So many people in the world have these excellences. They have a good body, a healthy human body. They have resources, wealth. They have friends. They have, what's the fourth one? Being able to complete their actions. You know, they can start businesses and become billionaires. So yeah, people can have these four excellences. But if they don't understand that these happen because of good actions done in the past, you know, having practiced generosity and ethics and so on in the past, and so they don't know that. So they just use these excellences, and maybe they create negative karma instead of good karma, or they just use up all their good karma, and they don't create more good karma, more causes to have these excellences in future lives. So this is what unwise, unskilled people do. But wise, skilled people, which we're trying to be, understand that these good qualities we have, these excellences, came about because of virtue that we created in the past. And it wouldn't be wise to just use them up, enjoy our life and use them up, not create any more virtue. So what's intelligent is using this life to continue doing those practices of generosity and ethical conduct, and patience, and joyous effort, and meditative stabilization and wisdom. So those 6 practices, so that we continue having these good conditions in the future. If you do not develop them anew, they will engender suffering in future lives. Yeah, so if we're not careful, then having these excellences, we may just create the cause for suffering instead of good conditions in the future. Hence, in future lives, those 6 perfections will not emerge causelessly, nor from a non-concordant cause. Like their respective corresponding causes, the perfections are specified as 6. I wasn't too happy with that translation, and so in the Lamrim Chenmo translation, it says the causes for the 6 perfections are themselves. Like to be able to, continue practicing the 6 perfections in future lives, we need to practice them now. Those are practicing generosity now is the concordant cause for being able to practice generosity in future lives. So we have to, understand the causes, the concordant causes, and practice those now. So the causes of the being able to have those excellences and be able to practice the 6 perfections in future lives are themselves the 6 perfections. So the 6 perfections themselves are the causes that need to be practiced to be able to have these good conditions in our future lives. That's what he's saying, basically. So that's how, the 6 perfections are specified as 6 from the point of view of high status, future lives, good future lives, having good conditions in our future lives to be able to not just enjoy ourselves, enjoy samsara, but continue practicing to reach Buddhahood. The wealth and so forth at the time of the path are temporary higher states, while those in ultimate higher states, such as an excellent body and so forth, exist on the Buddha ground. So while we're still in samsara, still on our way to enlightenment, having wealth and so forth, these are temporary higher states. And then when we reach Buddhahood and we have the excellent body of a Buddha and the excellent resources of a Buddha, those are the ultimate higher states. So the term higher states can refer both to temporary and ultimate. Similarly, Ornament for the Mahayana Sutras states, excellent wealth, body, companions, and effort are higher states of the first 4 perfections. To not be controlled by mental afflictions and to be unmistaken regarding activities are results of the final 2. So the 4 excellences, plus those 2 other qualities, being able to overcome afflictions and have discriminating wisdom about good and bad and so on, those are the result of the 6 perfections. Does that make sense? So I copied out something from Geshe Zopa's commentary, in case it wasn't clear. He says, the concordant causes that result in an excellent life are the 6 perfections. From the prior practice of generosity, one is born having whatever one needs. Wealth is not an accident of birth, and it's not, what's that term? They use entitlement. It's not that you're entitled. Affluence comes from an individual's generosity in a prior life. If we want prosperity in the future, we must create the cause for it, the practice of generosity. The practice of ethical discipline results in a beautiful human body and a long life. Doesn't have to be beautiful, but at least healthy and well-functioning. And the third cause is patience. Treating others well, even when they try to harm you, results in pleasant surroundings and helpful companions. Perseverance, his term for joyous effort, the fourth perfection, in the past enables one to accomplish whatever task one undertakes in this life. Without it, one will be scattered and run around ineffectually. So these four basic good qualities result from the first four perfections. The fifth perfection, meditative stabilization, results in the ability to restrain the mind from negativity for as long as one wishes. One is able to keep the first four good qualities from becoming conditions for mental afflictions to arise. One also needs the eye of wisdom that can distinguish what should be abandoned from what should be undertaken. The past practice of wisdom enables one to distinguish good from bad, so that one does not create the causes of future destruction. In this way, the six perfections are the causes for a marvelous high rebirth. To have a continuum of high rebirths, one has to create the causes in each life for the next one. That's helpful. Okay, let's see. Get into the next one. So this is the second. The number, as specified from the point of view of the accomplishment of the two welfares. The two welfares are your own welfare and the welfare of others. When you train in bodhisattva conduct with such a life, there are only two types of bodhisattva activities: those that accomplish one's own welfare and those that accomplish the welfare of others. Specifically, in order to accomplish the welfare of others, it is necessary to first benefit them with material gifts. You want to make them happy and feel happy with you, so you give them things. Since generosity accompanied by harm to sentient beings leads to nothing, it is itself of great benefit to others to completely turn away from actions that harm others together with their bases. So sometimes people are generous, giving gifts to others, but they're not very ethical in their behavior. I was thinking about, some cases I've heard of people who are very, do a lot of social work, social activism, and they look like they're helping people, but then later you hear stories about abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and so on, which is very sad. So I think that's what he's saying here. It's not enough just to be generous. You also have to refrain from harmful behavior. Therefore, ethics are necessary. However, those pure ethics cannot come about if you are unable to bear being harmed and you retaliate once or twice. So to perfect ethics, it is necessary to have the patience that in the face of harm, things, it does not matter. Like John Lewis, we heard about yesterday, even beaten up horribly and just determined not to retaliate, not to give harm in return. Since your patience prevents you from retaliating, you then prevent others from accumulating a lot of bad actions. Inspired by that, they will then apply themselves to virtue. Thus, it is of great benefit to others. So maybe that's referring to joyous effort. Yeah, if you can be really determined to not retaliate, stick to your values, nonviolence, that will inspire others to also be that way and apply themselves to virtue. So that's about the welfare of others. And then next is your own welfare. If your own welfare is to attain the happiness of liberation through the power of wisdom, this will not come with a distracted mind, and so you must place your mind in equipoise by means of meditative stabilization. Thus, it is necessary to achieve the suppleness of a mind that abides on the observed object for as long as you wish. So we need meditative stabilization to accomplish our own welfare, get ourselves out of samsara, get ourselves to enlightenment. Because if our mind is scattered, we won't be able to achieve that. Since this does not arise in the lazy, you need to set about it with joyous effort, not relenting day or night. This is the basis of the other perfections. Therefore, in order to bring about the two welfares, the perfections are specified as 6. So for the welfare of others, it's mainly the first, well, it seems to be mainly talking about the first 3 perfections. He mentions those by name: generosity, ethics, and patience. So we need those to accomplish others' welfare, benefit others. And then for our own welfare, we need meditative stabilization and wisdom so that we can tame our mind and get our mind to liberation from the causes of suffering. And we need joyous effort as well to accomplish those 2 things. Ornament for the Mahayana Sutra says, great effort for the welfare of beings is made by giving, not harming, and patience. So yeah, the first 3 perfections is for the welfare of others. Abiding and liberation together with their bases. Enact your own welfare in all aspects. Not completely clear what he's saying, but I guess he's saying for your own welfare, you need abiding, I guess calm abiding, and then liberation with wisdom, together with their bases. Maybe that's referring to joyous effort, I'm not sure. Yeah, he says above, this is the basis of the other perfections, joyous effort. So yeah, sometimes they say joyous effort is needed for both. And that's true. We need joyous effort to be able to work for others. If we're lazy, yeah, we won't do anything. But we also need it for our own welfare to accomplish calm abiding and then special insight. These components do not exhaust the means of securing the welfare of others in its entirety. So what that means is, we also, in the commentary, we also need the 4 ways of gathering. So that comes later after the explanation of the 6 perfections. There's also this list of 4 ways of gathering disciples, how you attract people to you so that you can teach them the Dharma and benefit them. In the statement, oh, here it is. In the statement, abiding and liberation, the mind abiding on the observed object is said to be the work of meditative stabilization, and liberation from cyclic existence is said to be the work of wisdom. When these 2 are differentiated, shamatha will not be mistaken for special insight. So I wondered about that, and Geshe Zopa says, some people confuse shamatha and special insight, thinking that deep non-conceptual meditation is the wisdom realizing emptiness. Lost my place. Okay, so I got to the end of that section. Any questions, comments, stories, jokes? Very quiet today.
I think when I finally started to take the 6 perfections more seriously, it helped me to increase my conviction that unlike my life spiritual journey where there were always this aspirations to be a kind of a certain person, but there was never a practical application of how to actually do that, that the six perfections lay out, at least in my mind, the most incredible step-by-step process on how to be able to attain these deep wishes, these deep aspirations without any confusion. And so that's probably been the biggest aha in the Dharma, but the six perfections, I think, is the unprecedented ability to be able to lay out exactly how to get where we want to go. And very clearly, under no uncertain terms, there's no confusion. And how they relate to each other, and how you can do them all together at the same time. I mean, just stunning.
And that's why this section is quite good before just jumping into the first perfection, to explain, why there's six and how they're important for this and that and how they relate to each other. It's very helpful, inspiring, clarifying. Okay, no more questions. We'll stop there for today and do our final prayers. Dedicate the merit, share the merit with all living beings. That's an act of giving, generosity.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.